David, say hello. Can you say hello to Larry Noodles over there? Okay. Okay. He's working on his.
Hello, how you doing?
Okay. I've known David for 50 years, and he's producing this podcast for us because I am Zoom challenged, as they say.
Should I wear a mask?
Pardon me?
Should I wear a mask?
No, your droplets are far enough away. Trust me.
Okay.
And the other person we have helping me out today is attorney and long 50-year friend, Jerry Balsam. Jerry, say hi to Larry.
Hi, Larry.
Hello.
Nice to see old faces and new ones. It looks like Mimi Bass is coming on.
Okay, great. Okay, now, Larry, before we start, I want you to know that this broadcast is being brought to you by.
Oh, I see. Very good.
Yeah?
My son did something like that too.
Okay, this show is being sponsored by Larry Noodles Chicken Noodle Soup, folks. Now, I don't know if this is kosher or not. Does that matter?
Well, you know,
I'm looking for the OU. Now, explain something to me. Some products have a K and some products have an OU. Are they the same thing?
I know most products have a K. I mean a OU. The K I think is a different organization, but
Isn't a K like white supremacy? Isn't that what it means?
Could KKK maybe?
Okay. Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, folks, let's get the show on the road. By the way, Larry, before we start, I want to just mention that this conversation is being recorded. You might have heard that before.
Yeah, anything I can use me against myself, right?
Okay. Larry Dressler, Larry served 18 months in Otisville Federal Prison for mortgage fraud. Also the home of, Otisville was also the home of Michael Cohen. I think he got what, Larry, 3 years?
Something like that.
Okay, Otisville is the home to the system's largest population of white-collar Jewish criminals. Larry pled guilty on October the 3rd of 2013. He was released in November of 2015. He is now a blogger, excuse me, LarryNoodles.com. He is an activist. He is an author. He is a conservator. He is a father. He is a husband. And he provides counseling to those entering prison. And the best news is he has a baby on the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Atova.
Do we know who the father is?
I'm pretty sure I'm the baby daddy.
Very good. Congratulations.
They have to take
now
blood test.
in the Torah, correct me if I'm wrong, they say that the religion of the baby is determined by the mother. Is that correct?
The religion, the Jewish status of the Jewish status, yeah.
Right.
As far as the tribe status is determined by the father.
The tribe by the father, but the religion by the mother.
Yeah.
Because in the old days, they could say, well, we know who the mother is.
You always know who your mother is.
You always know who your mother is. Okay. All right.
Well, you have two mothers.
Too much. I want to share with our listeners that I've been researching you. I've been reading your blog, LarryNoodles.com. There are two Larry Noodles, whether you know this or not. There are two of you. There's the guy that spent time in Otisville, but there's the author, the blogger, the activist, the guy that is on video chasing down pedophile rabbis. Tell us about the two. Where are you going with my Larry Noodles? No, I want my Larry.
You don't see
This
it.
this stays with me. Okay, kids, this stays with me. Larry, tell us about the two of you.
Well, they were. I started as Larry Noodles, and before I went to Otisville, I was going to this synagogue, the Orthodox synagogue, with this rabbi who I had known for some years, and his family. And they kind of ran like a little cult here in New Haven. And it was a very unusual setup. They had a school, very small. It was like 5 boys. And they had this giant campus, old buildings. And it was always a strange place. The local community, Jewish community, would send their kids there, but usually nobody really stayed for very long. Everyone seemed to leave for mysterious reasons. Nobody really talked about it. And when I got out of Otisville, I went I went there again, and I heard some rumors about some sort of lawsuit or something going on with some accusations against the rabbi who had been there for like 40 years. He was his name was Daniel Greer. He was a big name in the Jewish Orthodox world, the Litvish world. But I mean, he made himself a big name, but he wasn't really. It's hard to describe. He had his own little cult. That's all I can say. And if you look around, the Orthodox community has gotten so big. You have a lot of these little cults all over now, in Lakewood or Borough Park, or I mean, so he ran this little tiny school where he attracted young boys, teenage boys, and as he advertised the school as a place where he was an old fashioned type of rabbi. He's also modern. He went to Yale, but he acted very old world. And he said he could help the kids, turn their lives around, challenged kids.
I've heard that one before.
So,
Yeah.
so this was going on for years. So this kid, Ellie Merlis, did have was negotiating with this Greer guy to try this behind the scenes. Nobody really talked about it. There was some rumors, and then I started to poke around because my son had went to the school for a year, and it was I could go on and on about that experience, but we took him out of there. So anyway, so I was sort of the one who exposed him. The rumors were going around. Nobody would write about it, the local paper or anything. And I was
Exposed
already
him, exposed him for what?
for molestation, child molest. So nobody would go near it. And I wasn't really a reporter. I was just a blogger. But I posted something on the internet saying that, well, actually, I had very good source. I had one of the rabbis who had worked there had left, and he moved to Georgia. And I kind of set him up in a way, but not meaning to set him up. I just called him up. I said, I heard these rumors, and I was talking to one former student who knew my son. And I said, what's going on over there? And then he just spilled the beans and was like in tears telling me, but first he said, don't tell anybody about it. And I said, yeah, I won't tell anybody. But I didn't realize what he was going to tell me. I was in shock. So I said, I can't just let this, regardless of I broke my promise with the guy. And I said, you just can't let this guy go on because there's still kids in the school and he's still, so this guy was already in Georgia. I don't think he cared anymore. He was just so traumatized by the place. So I wrote a blog about it, about what I heard from him. So I printed his name, and then people, the whole Jewish community went crazy and started calling him. What was he going to say? He's an honest guy. He's not going to say, I didn't say that. So the lawsuit by the victim was brought like a few weeks after I had blogged about it.
Okay, Larry, let me just try to summarize and clarify what it is that you're saying. When you were in Otisville, was this guy, this rabbi there with you?
Oh no, he was running his yeshiva.
Okay, he was running his yeshiva, and it was only after you were released that you exposed him for the stuff that he was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fine. And where is he today?
He's in jail. He was in jail. Now he's out on home confinement because of the COVID, but he was sentenced to 12 years in jail.
Oh my goodness.
And
Okay.
because of actually, I started the whole thing. I covered it, the civil trial. I went to the trial every day, wrote about it. And the civil trial resulted in a $15 million verdict against him. So the cops were sort of waiting to see what happened with the civil trial because they weren't going to arrest him if he was found not liable in the civil trial.
What is your particular interest in Rabbi Daniel Greer? Because I asked that question because I read your blog. Much of your blog is dedicated to writing about this guy, videotaping this guy, following this man, asking him questions. Do you have skin in this game?
Well, I did know some of the victims personally, so I felt bad, and I felt, bad that nobody in the Jewish community was saying a word about it. And I thought it would help, the cases against him to expose him as much as possible. Um, and
I'd like
he
to ask a
was,
follow-up, but before I do, I think Zach and I would like to greet Bob Gluck, who's come on to the call. He's been instrumental in setting up our reunion and our group. And Bob, unfortunately, tested positive for COVID last week. So we hope, the fact that he's with us now shows that he's feeling well enough to participate. And we hope he feels entirely better really soon.
Here,
And
here, here, here,
Bob to be back to be the Bob we know him to be. Uh,
here, here.
Bob, I was going to ask you is
Excuse me,
when you
Robert, would you mind putting your mask on, please?
when you began blogging about this and the story got out, people say, "Oh yeah, we all knew about this, but no one was talking about it." Had you ever heard anything from your son from his days at the yeshiva?
yeah, I mean, my son was quiet about it too. He didn't really open up about it. It's like these guys that are boys, I guess, that are in a yeshiva, it's kind of like what goes on in the yeshiva stays. There's this mentality that, they don't really want to talk about it. They don't want to, get attention. They're embarrassed. There's a lot of shame, especially male on male rape or molestation, as opposed to male on female molestation. There's a lot of shame with men. Uh,
Larry, I want to just shift the conversation just a little bit to your time in Otisville. Now, you did share being incarcerated with other Orthodox rabbis, did you not?
yes,
And what were they in for?
all sorts of crimes, white collar. I mean, a big one was insurance fraud, fire insurance fraud. Burning down a building and then collecting the fire insurance. That happened a lot in Brooklyn. There was also mortgage fraud. After the market crashed, a lot of lawyers got indicted. I was one of them. There was many lawyers I met coming and going into Otisville for mortgage fraud. There were also guys involved in the more recently after I got out with the Get. They kidnapped guys and tortured them until they signed Get, and they were paid a lot of money by families to kidnap guys for these Gets. That
Are you telling me that there is Jewish organized crime? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if it's so organized. It's a small group of guys are known to, if there's a husband who gets a divorce from an Orthodox woman, and she won't, and he won't. If they get a secular divorce, is fine, but in court, secular court, but in religious court, you need the husband is supposed to sign a get, a bill of divorce, releasing his wife. And if he doesn't do that in the more of the ultra orthodox world, uh, she can't remarry. So, and they get married young, and you're 25, 30 years old, and you can't get remarried. I mean, you can imagine how angry.
Let, let me see if I understand this. There were guys in jail when you were in Otisville that were criminally responsible for intimidating Orthodox men because they refused to give their wives a get. Is that what you're saying?
Uh-huh.
Jeez.
Um,
Poor choice of words, but yeah.
well, there was one rabbi, the New York Post called him Rabbi Prod Father because he used cattle prods on the guy's testicles.
Okay, back to Otisville and your
Yeah.
blog. Now, you said in your blog, and I quote, "You won't find any atheists in a foxhole." What did you mean by that?
I think there's a lot of guys that go in there and they feel bad that they're in jail, and they regret what they did. And I think some people become more religious, whether they intended to or not. Um, and your whole life, I guess, caves in on you. People lose their money, their license, medical license, law license, um, their wife. Yeah, I mean, a lot of bad things happen to people, and they're stuck in this. I guess you could say it's like a homeless shelter. There's a big room, where you're locked in there with guys in bunk beds, and you get to walk around outside, but you have security everywhere. And so, I mean, it really is a humbling experience.
Did you get closer to God in Otisville?
I think I felt, uh, I guess, more appreciative of life. And I guess if you believe that God is the one who is responsible for all life, and I guess you could say in that sort of way, because when you get out of jail, you realize how much freedom is really, you appreciate your freedom, and you say you shouldn't. I guess it's cliche, don't sweat the small things, but I still get aggravated over the small things. I don't think, uh, but it does change you in many ways. Um,
Tell me about the challenges you faced practicing Judaism behind bars.
um, it was interesting because I had never been exposed to a thing with Otisville is you had a diverse group of Jews locked up and they had one shul, one chapel that they all prayed in every week, every day, 3 times a day. They had a minyan 3 times a day. So it was run by the Orthodox, but there's different, kinds of Orthodox out there. So there was and people coming and going all the time. So what style of prayer, what style of davening, how the prayer services are conducted from the time. I mean, should we start at 6:30 in the morning or 6:35? Guys are already kind of uptight anyway, so guys would get on each other's nerves about everything. There's always constant fighting and bickering over. I mean, if you live in Brooklyn and you don't like a shul, you can go down the street to another one. I mean, there's always politics in the synagogue, but this was extreme politics because everybody was each other's face.
What percentage of the inmates? Now you were in Camp Otisville, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah, which is a minimum security facility?
it was less secure. Yeah, then you could just walk off and get in a car and drive away if you wanted to.
Really?
Yeah, but nobody was going to do that. Where would you go? I mean, what would you do? You would need. I mean, if you got caught, you're looking at 5 year mandatory minimum sentence for escape.
Right, right.
There's no point. I mean, even though the prison next door, the medium, you couldn't do that. You're surrounded by barbed wire fences, and you had the inside to get from the. You had an outdoor area, but you'd have to scale a few fences to get out of there. I mean, you'd have to be Superman to get out of there.
Of the
Larry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious about the process for getting into Otisville as opposed to out of it, meaning you're a Jewish guy, you commit a white collar offense. How does the Bureau of Prisons decide where you go?
I think with Otisville, there's a lot of politics involved. You have a lot of Hasidic Jews who are very politically involved. They have a very big community in Brooklyn and in Muncie, upstate New York. So their guys, are get in trouble. I don't know if it's any more or less per capita, but since they have big communities, I mean, so they have a lot of they have a lot of political pull in the New York area. So there's only so many prisons, so many camps, so many federal prisons in the tri-state area. You have Fort Dix, Otisville, and you have a couple in Manhattan. You have one in Manhattan, MCC, where Epstein was, and MDC in Brooklyn. And nobody wants to go there. So the Olive Institute, I don't know if you heard of them. It's a prison where they have a lot of political pull. It's a big organization, and I went through them. I asked them, and they sort of send a lot of Jews to. Well, they did at the time. It's not as many Jews there now, but at the time, they sent a lot of Jews to Otisville camp because it was close to Manhattan and the tri-state area. It wasn't that far out, and there wasn't really many other choices out there. And as I said, they had it pretty set up with the Bureau of Prison. I think because there were some high-profile Orthodox guys in there at the time, so they may have had a lot of money to pay whoever, politicians, whatever, support policy. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of power in New York politics on the
Yeah,
state and local level.
Larry, during the week, you and I have been exchanging emails, and
Yeah,
tell us the story of how money works in prison. It sounds like it works similar to the way it does when you're outside of prison, that money talks.
yeah. I mean, if you have money and you go into jail, certainly you can pay guys off to do whatever you want for them. I mean, in violent prisons, you can pay for protection, if you need. In Otisville, you can pay for the food. I mean, if you want better food, I mean, the prison rations are really not that good. So,
Speaking of prison rations, let me see if I could get. Does this look at all familiar to you?
Haywood, that's just,
Okay, okay. Let me read it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong document here. Forgive me.
you
Forgive me.
want a
I'm
shopping
sorry.
list?
I'm sorry. This is what I wanted you to look at.
This one's an eye chart.
Oh, yeah, that looks like the
Okay.
commissary.
Here's the menu, folks. And Larry, I'd like you to be the food critic, if you will. These are the kosher selections at Otisville. Okay, Larry, let's, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's start with the $3.15 matzahs.
Yeah, I don't remember. We had so many matzahs that were brought in from the Olive Institute. Nobody bought the matzahs.
Nobody bought the matzahs.
No,
Okay.
we had matzahs that lasted all year. They had boxes, sky high, the Shmura matzahs, the $20 a pound matzahs. They were
Okay.
in the warden's room office. I couldn't
Right.
believe it. We were
So,
eating
so
matzahs all year.
so matzahs weren't like this, like cigarettes where they were valuable and you can trade for
Yeah,
stuff.
not at all.
Okay. How about Geffen noodle soup?
Yeah,
$1.55?
that's what they every week they bought a whole bunch of that and made a big pot of chicken soup, and we had chicken soup for Friday night.
Now, why did they call you Larry Noodles?
That's because I was caught with pasta, a spiral pasta in my bunk. I had smuggled it from the well, I had cooked it in the warehouse microwave. Then I brought it into back to my where I slept in my bunk, and I hid it in one of my coat jacket or something. And every now and then, these guards they rip through your everything you own, your life possessions. You live out of a backpack. I mean, so if they find something illegal or you shouldn't have, they write you up, they discipline you. So they found these noodles and they were giving me a hard time, and they said, well, this isn't in the kitchen over here. You must have gotten them at the warehouse and you work there because we don't bring them in here. They go into the medium prison. So I said, I'm sorry. I didn't think it was such a serious crime, you know. And the guy wrote me up for a discipline report. I had to move my dorm, my bunk. So that's the worst thing when you got to when they force you to move from one bunk to another bunk, like to like the you know the dunce, you know you're in trouble. So you go to a different. So you're carrying everything on your backpack or in a little cart, and everyone's laughing at you because you're you know. So then they called me Larry Noodles
Okay,
because
let's go. Let's move on to the matzo ball chicken soup. How is that?
I don't remember having that.
Okay, what about the cheese ravioli?
No, I don't think anyone bought that.
Okay, gefilte fish.
Yeah, they would bring. Yeah, we would have gefilte fish. They bought a whole bunch of that Friday night meal. Everyone would have gefilte fish.
How about bone-in salmon? Bone-in is a phrase that might have been popular in prison. Anyway, bone-in salmon.
Yeah, yeah, some guys would get that. I mean, those weren't cheap. What was that, like $5 or $10?
The bone-in salmon was $4.92.
Well, you didn't get much salmon for that.
Oh my goodness! Now, were these products were they glot kosher?
Yeah, if they were on the list.
Were
Yeah,
are you glot kosher?
yeah.
So you were restricted to this little list of stuff in Otisville?
No, well, on the holidays they would bring in special kosher food. The Aleph Institute would bring in a lot of food, packaged food, and we they'd give us more than enough for the holiday, like for Sukkot or Passover, or whatever for Rosh Hashanah. They would bring in packets of the salmon and whatever you were reading there, but much bigger portions in their own containers, and we would, you know, put them in the freezers and have them for for a longer period of time. But not everybody had access to them. Just the guys who were, the guys with the money and the power. They would have, and if you wanted some of that, you'd have to pay them to get it, or you'd have to work like in the warehouse where I was, and the food would come through the warehouse, and I would just, it would fall off the truck, and I would pick it up. What do you say when you fall off the truck? You take it and stash it away in the warehouse, hide it in the warehouse, and then guys in the warehouse would have their own stash of food.
Mm-hmm.
People were always focused on food. That was like a big commodity. These guys lost weight. Guys would go in there, 200 pounds, 300, they'd lose 50 pounds in like a few months. It was unbelievable.
Maybe you could start the Otisville diet.
With our Otisville diet.
Did they also put on muscle like you hear in perhaps the more violent prisons where guys really pump a lot of iron?
Oh yeah, they did. Everybody was in the gym. I was working out like 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, I was in the best shape of my life. But they got. I heard that they got rid of. They won't allow free weights in the prisons anymore. If they're already there, they let them there, but they won't let because they don't want the guys getting too bulked up and fighting or whatever. Um, Also, if you are trained in judo or karate, they make you sign something that you're not going to teach anybody how to anything about karate or judo, because a lot of guys would make money training other guys, or teaching them skills, or you just name anything you want. If you have a skill, uh, you could get paid to teach somebody.
Is there a jailhouse lawyer phenomenon there, or are there too many
Oh
lawyers?
yeah,
The
there was
skill's not valuable.
yeah, there was a guy. Yeah, there were a few guys. Actually, the best jailhouse lawyer in there was not even a real lawyer. He got guys. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. He was a drug dealer or something. But
What does the jailhouse lawyer actually do?
well, they work on guys' cases. They write their habeas appeals and motions to modify their sentence and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have giant accordion files they store in their bunk, and it's against the rules, but people broke the rules all the time. And
Do,
the,
do you, is it just me, or is there a certain hypocrisy to holding yourself out as a clergyman and being incarcerated for money laundering and pedophilia?
well, yeah, we didn't have any pedophiles in there because that was considered a violent crime, and they would be in the medium prison. But we had, yeah, guy rabbis that were involved in money laundering. Sure, that's actually not uncommon. I was money launderers approach Orthodox rabbi, or people who want to hide their money and avoid taxes approach rabbis all the time to have it laundered through Israel or for wherever. Um,
So
but
how does
the,
that work? I make out a contribution to your organization. You give me back 90% of it. I get a nice tax deduction.
yeah, that's the old
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, it happens on the.
So Jerry, you, for example, would make out a check, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong. Jerry would make out a check to $1,000 to his local synagogue. His rabbi would give him 900 in cash, and the rabbi would keep 100. Jerry gets to write off the entire 1,000, and he's got $900 in tax-free money.
Yeah, something like that.
And but back to circling back to my original question, Larry, these are supposed to be men of ethics. How do they how do they reconcile what appears to me to be a staggering contradiction?
Well, a lot of people grow up on the rabbi track. They're born into that lifestyle and they become rabbis. And I don't think they really think of themselves as any different than all of their friends or a higher calling. It's not like they went into it, you know.
I get it. A dollar is a dollar is a dollar.
I mean, some guys have big families. They're desperate. They need the money. Um, Everyone has their own issues.
Mhm. To what
Larry,
extent?
among the prisoners you were with, was there a sort of hierarchy aside from money? But like, were certain crimes considered really bad that people would shun the people who committed those offenses?
Well, in most prisons, I think in all prisons, a child molester is considered the worst of the worst. Nobody, they get beaten, they get killed.
But you
And
didn't have that in
no, we
in
didn't
the
have
camp.
that. So that wasn't, I mean, in Otisville, yeah, everybody had their own. I mean, it was funny because guys, would put down other guy. I mean, anytime guys would get in a fight and try to like act like they're better than another guy, someone would say, "Listen, we're all here. We're all in the same boat here. We're all bad. How can you like say that you're any better than anybody else here?"
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, guys who were involved in the really big financial crimes. I mean, I guess they had more. People would respect them a little bit more, I guess. Guys were like we had billionaires in there. I mean, there's a guy named Walter Forbes who went to trial like 3 times before they convicted him. So guys, um, I mean, guys who were in small time crime. I mean, people didn't really look at your crime so much as how you behaved in the prison. If you were a jerk, regardless of what you did on the outside, I mean, how you were treated was depending how you treated everybody, how you got along with. If you didn't get along well, if you were not, if you were if you were neurotic and you couldn't deal with people, it's communal living. The bottom line, you're living in close quarters. If you can't live with people and accept other guys, sleeping right next to you, and if they get you aggravated and you start yelling at people or just bothering everybody. I mean, guys would just pop off and start screaming at other guys. I mean, and so nobody wanted to be around them. I mean, everyone had to get along. So guys were in there longer. Usually were a little bit more calm than the guys would first come in and they'd just be bouncing off the walls. They're just like, what am I doing here? They just couldn't handle the pressure.
How
Uh,
long did it take you to get acclimated?
yeah, it took a good month or couple of months to really settle down and get your bearings. I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, it's such an adjustment. I mean, you're living with like 100 guys, on top of each other. You got guards yelling. I mean, it's just, yeah, it was just a lot of shock. You don't know who to trust. Everybody's telling you different things. Um, but I mean, depends on what type of person you were. I mean, some guys were just, angry, unstable individuals, and they would usually get in trouble as soon as they came in, and they'd throw them in the solitary until they cool down.
Larry, we're getting a question on the chat whether there's an equivalent Jewish prison for women.
I don't think there's many Jewish women criminals as men, but I don't. Yeah, I never heard. I mean, Danbury is where Martha Stewart went. Leona Helmsley, she was Jewish. So, she went. I don't think so, um, but it's possible.
Larry, would you please share, for entertainment purposes, if nothing else, your story that you told me about weekend visitation with some of our Orthodox rabbi friends?
Oh, I mean, yeah, there was this guy. He was a Satmar, and he was. I don't know if he was an ordained rabbi or he just went through the. I mean, he grew up that way, and he had the Hasidic garb he would wear, and he came from a prominent family actually. So he had maybe 5 or 10 kids. So he had his African American girlfriend visit him on Saturdays on the Sabbath, and on Sundays his wife with all her kids would come and visit. So that kind of pissed off some of the rabbi inmates, and it's
Were they pissed off because this guy had a hot looking girlfriend, or were they? Why were they pissed off?
well, it makes the Jewish inmates look bad, and they're rabbis. They have respect. I mean, listen, their crimes were a lot worse than what this guy was doing with his girlfriend, but that's beside the fact. But they didn't want attention brought to the Jewish inmates because I think you had a small core of very wealthy Jewish inmates who were able to get in all this extra food, and they wanted a minion there. So you wanted a, a lot of Jews at this prison, but you wanted to keep them under control and not get the other Jewish inmates riled up. I mean, the other Jews, the Hasidim or the really right wing Jews would see him as being, committing all kinds of sins and get mad at him. And who knows what they didn't want any of that. They didn't want any trouble from the guards. So they didn't want to rock the boat. They wanted to keep things quiet. They got mad at me for writing the blog, for sending the blog out to my friend.
So, so,
Uh,
so the rabbis' girlfriends would come visit on Saturday, and their wives would and kids would come visit on Sunday. Is that about it?
yeah, there was this guy. Yeah, this one guy. And
Jerry, how do you like that arrangement?
I think the Fifth Amendment applies to all these.
well, he didn't
Larry,
say it was his girlfriend. He said it was his secretary, quote unquote secretary.
Larry,
I
I
was like,
assume they had a safer Torah for the minion, and how did
oh
that?
yeah, oh yeah. And getting back, I think he had a child with this girl too,
Oh
because
my goodness.
I think they brought a child. They said the child looked just like him. I didn't see the child. Anyway, they did have a Sefer Torah, and sometimes there was some politics with that. I think the Aleph Institute donated it, and they got in a fight. They whoever donated it took it back, and then they brought in another one, but that was locked up in a safe with a or like a metal box with a padlock, and only I think one or two inmates had the combination to that. So,
Did they let you put tefillin on in the morning?
well, yeah, everyone had their tefillin, and one guy stole another guy's tefillin and hid it, because he was mad at him. I mean, tefillin aren't cheap, so yeah, that guy went crazy, and then the guards gave him like 24 hours to return it, with no questions asked. So
Larry, we got a question on the chat about whether the guards were susceptible to being bribed.
I'm sure they were. It's not uncommon for guards to get bribed. They get caught all the time in the federal system. They're very low paid. It's not a great job, and they, yeah, I mean the more maximum security prisons or the medium, they get paid to smuggle in drugs or whatever. At Otisville, the Jewish prison, it's food.
Oh my goodness. We have a question from Dave Schlacht here. Go ahead, Dave.
Any cholent on Shabbat?
What?
He wants to know if there was cholent on Shabbat. Cholent.
Oh yes, it was cholent. It wasn't the greatest. There was a lot of beans and potatoes and barley and maybe a little bit. Sometimes there was some meat. It wasn't the best meat though, but every now and then they have some kind of mystery meat.
Mhm. How did you manage to keep your sanity? You said it took you a couple of months to get acclimated, but once you got acclimated, I mean, what do guys do there? Do they play cards? Do they play checkers? What do they do?
Oh yeah, backgammon was very big. Checkers, chess, cards. I mean, there's a lot of gamblers in there. I mean, especially the Russians. This big gambling table, and they'd actually pay certain guys to like pick up their cards and their chips or whatever. And that was against the rules. You weren't supposed to gamble, but they did it in front of the guards. The guards didn't seem to care. Every now and then, the guys would get in a fight over somebody owed somebody some money. Or some of them were gambled over like a pack of tuna fish. And if you didn't pay your debts, I remember a guy would be chasing another guy around the camp all day, screaming at him. And then the guards had a big meeting. They said, make sure you pay your gambling debts. Stop this, we don't want to, if you're going to gamble, pay your debts. Stop driving us crazy with this. But yeah, I mean, there was some guy working out, going to the gym, jogging.
Were there fights? Were there physical fights?
Yeah, there were a few, but nothing really that serious. I mean, one guy was actually a black guy. He was in there so long, maybe 10 years. And guys who are in there that long in a prison so far away from their family and friends, they lose contact. Nobody visits them. And once they get out, they're sort of thrown on the streets. There's nothing for them. So this guy was like, I can't deal with leaving. So he got in a fight until somebody kept fighting until someone knocked him out. And then he got his sentence extended. So
so he was institutionalized. Am I using the right word?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, and define for our podcast listeners what it means when somebody is institutionalized.
Well, I guess they become so used to the prison life. It's just frightening to leave it. It's you're in a completely sealed environment where you're used to living you're up every morning at the same time, you eat at the same. Everything is regimented, so you're doing the same thing day after day, week after week, month, year after year, and it's like you don't remember. I remember when I got out, I had never went upstairs for 18 months. I remember going up the stairs, I tripped. I couldn't remember how to walk upstairs. Everything was flat. So just a little thing like that. Or I would hear a police siren and I would just get a little bit nervous and kind of stressed out to hear that, to see a police officer. I mean, going from, I mean, you prison is not easy, but you kind of get used to living a certain way, and it's difficult for people to leave that, especially when their lives are so So yeah,
regimented.
regimented and just set up in such a way where it's the same thing, and they don't have to really think so much. You don't have to worry about getting a job. You don't have to worry about doing anything really. Just doing what you do every day.
Yeah,
Larry, another question came in over the chat, and that is, did the politicians that you saw in Otisville get any kind of special treatment?
No, I mean, there's had a few in there. I remember. I mean, Sheldon Silver's in there right now. He's like around 70, maybe in the 70s. Um,
Didn't he just get out?
oh yeah, I think he may have gotten out. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he was,
he was in there.
Trump got him out.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I'm going to check.
not Silver. No, no, Silver didn't. He tried to get out. Trump, yeah. I was there with Carl Kruger. I remember him. He was a politician. Anthony Weiner was in the other prison, not our prison. I heard about him. But no, nobody got special treatment unless you had money and you that's what got you special treatment. Didn't really matter what you did.
Yeah, Wikipedia says Silver is still in Otisville. Just for the record.
Yeah, I remember. There's a guy I know in there.
Larry, did you make any friendships there that carried throughout, even after you were released?
Oh, sure. I have some friends from there. I don't, I talk to them every now and then. But yeah, you share something that's, that nobody else can really relate to. But
Are you discouraged from having those relationships by a probation officer, or is that not an issue?
oh no, I mean, you're not supposed to have any friends from prison for the time you're on probation. So if you're on probation for usually 2 or 3 years, I mean, you can get in trouble. Theoretically, they could revoke your probation if you're caught fraternizing with other felons or I mean, guys break that rule all the time, but it doesn't really come to nothing really happens unless they get like in trouble for like 10 other things for violating the probation, and they see that they were also interacting with other felons. They may add that on, but they usually don't. I never seen where they actually go out of their way to check whether you're, talking to people who were felons. They just don't have the manpower to. I mean, if you get arrested for drug dealing by the state police after you're out, and then the federal government, the Justice Department will violate your probation. I mean, that's normally what happens in most cases.
Larry, according to your blog, Donald Trump pardoned quite a number of Orthodox Jews that were perhaps imprisoned in Otisville. And I was like a guy named Rubishkin and some other people.
Yeah, Pashkin. Yeah.
What is the Trump connection with pardoning Orthodox Jews? Was Kushner the linchpin in that transaction?
I don't know if Kushner had a lot to do with the First Step Act that Trump passed. But as far as the pardons,
Yeah, I mean, of all the people Trump can pardon, why would he pardon Orthodox Jews?
well, as I said before, they do have the Aleph Institute, and there's a lot of people in the Satmar community, the Hasidic community in Williamsburg and in upstate New York. They have a lot of political connections. They helped Hillary Clinton some years ago. I think she released a few guys from their group. So there's already a lot of connections with the federal government, with that community, and even with the state government too. With some of them get arrested with New York State. So I think it's just politics, lobbying. Maybe money changed hands. I don't know. Nobody's talking about that, obviously.
But some of the Orthodox people that he pardoned were in for very serious violations, were they not?
I mean, there was a guy. what's his name, Weiss, Shalom Weiss. He was, yeah, in there for like 800 years or something like that. I mean, but he should have never gotten that many years because he was because he skipped time. I mean, he was in Europe. He had all sorts of other issues, but the actual crime that he pleaded guilty to, I mean, should have never gotten that kind of sentence. I mean, Bernie Madoff didn't get that. He only got 150 years. So, I mean, I could see him having a good, but getting out completely. I don't know. Maybe Rubashkin also got a very long sentence for what he did compared to other sentences. I mean, he was sentenced in Iowa, so if he was sentenced in New York, it would have been different because you don't have those kinds of financial crimes in Iowa. It's different. They view it differently. But the bottom line is that most of the people who got out had a lot of money and had a lot of connections. And
Larry, tell us about the work you're doing now that you're a free man. I mean, you're an activist, you're a blogger. I know you're writing a book. You counsel people that may have been told to surrender to a correctional facility. Talk about that a little bit.
yeah, I try to help people, and through my blog, a lot of people contact me and ask me about prison and what's it like, and I hear about this place, that place, or other guys call me to try to track somebody down. I don't know if they want to kill the guy or make them, find a long lost friend or whatever. But most of the time, I can't really. I'm not a clearinghouse. I can't track down people. Um, but they asked me some questions about the institutions and about maybe finding a lawyer or maybe some legal issues they have. Um, so I try to steer them in the right direction.
Are you what they call a prison consultant?
I mean, I'm not no, I don't consider myself a prison consultant. I mean, there are guys that I guess call themselves that, but I can't see myself asking people for, thousands of dollars just to give them, information just for helping them out with, the information that's really not worth that much. Then the prison consultants. I mean, there was a guy. I guess he used to be a correctional officer, and then he'd be or a warden or something, and then they become prison consultants. And then,
Mhm.
yeah, I knew guys in jail who paid these guys like $5,000 or something, and they said they didn't really tell them anything that they couldn't find out themselves.
Right,
Just
right.
some,
Okay, Larry, let's do a little role playing here. I
yeah.
call you on the phone and I say, Larry, my name is Zach. I've just been ordered to spend 20 months in Otisville and I'm scared to death. What do you tell them?
Well, I guess I would tell them that uh, they need to not be scared. It's not as bad as as they think it. Otisville is not violent. They're not going to get killed or attacked. I mean, as long as they keep their head down and just keep a low profile. Once they gain their bearings, at that point, then things will. I mean, it's not fun, but there are worse things in life. I mean, there was one guy who was a Jewish drug laundering money for drug dealers, right? And they the drug dealers were planning to kill him for whatever reason and rob him or something. Well, the feds busted them up that very when they that time that they were planning to kill. So the feds actually saved his life. So he was in jail. I mean, you got to look at life in a different perspective. I mean, could have been worse. He could have been killed.
Mhm.
Uh,
Now you are an attorney. Are you entitled at this point in time to practice law once again?
it's just my license is suspended, so I have to reapply, go through that whole process, which I'm.
Are you doing that?
Yeah, yeah. I would like to. It's funny being outside. I used to practice with general practice. A lot of, I mean, the practice of law is very busy, stressful, listening to people's problems all day, and being away from it, I kind of, it's, I don't miss a lot of that part of it, but I like the challenge of trying to help people and figuring out the law and research and everything else.
And you're
Larry,
also,
we got a couple,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, we got a couple of questions on the chat that I think are sort of related. So let me ask both of them and you can handle them any order you want. One is, are there any mental health supports when you're in prison? And number two is, more globally, if you were running the Bureau of Prisons, what changes would you make?
Well, I mean, when you first go in there, they have you see the prison psychologist, and she basically asks you if you're suicidal, and it's like a 5-minute talk, and if you say you're suicidal or you want to hurt yourself or somebody else, and they throw you in solitary. So there's no point in saying that. So yeah, and you're pretty much on your own. There's no psychiatric help. There is meds people get. I remember there's a pill lines that people were on some sort of antidepressants or antipsychotics. It probably wasn't the same drugs they were taking on the outside, but it's or something similar. So guys were on some sort of meds. Well, there was always guys on meds. Um, that was the first question.
And then the other is, if you were running the Bureau of Prisons, what changes would you make?
Well, I mean, there would have to be tremendous change. I mean, even in the state prisons. I mean, in Europe, they're doing a lot of innovative ways to help people instead of just warehousing them, to get them to turn their lives around. Because there should be more psychologists involved in reforming the prison system. Because as it is now, it's really not helpful. It's not really doing much good for people.
Tell us about the book you're writing, Larry.
Oh, I've been writing, yeah, for the last couple of years since I got out. I've been writing about basically a timeline from when I first got indicted until going through my whole legal process, going through the court system and everything else, just to give like a background of myself, and then going into prison, into Otisville, and then all the stories with all the characters that I met, and then getting out of prison and what that was like. So that's basically the outline of my book.
As a practical joke, will your book be hollowed out and stash a little something in there?
I put a file in there. A file in the in the spine of the book.
Right, exactly. We have taken up your valuable time for about an hour, Larry. We do have other people here. Any questions for Larry Noodle before we let him go? None? Okay. Jerry, any last questions for Larry?
No, I've been getting these questions in on the chat, so I think we've covered the waterfront for now at least. And we don't have anything more to talk about Otisville in the future.
Okay, absolutely. By the way,
last question. Ask him if he's using real names in the book, or if he hired changes people's names.
I'm sorry, say it again.
He's using people's real names in the book.
Okay, the question is, Larry, in your book, will you be using people's real names or fictitious names?
That's a good question. I think for the big names that everybody knows, I think I would use the real names. But for guys who aren't really that important, because I could spare them my book.
Okay, well, Larry, on behalf of Jerry and David and all of our Hillel podcast listeners, you've been very generous with your time. And as far as I'm concerned, you are a tzaddik, Mr. Noodles, Mr. Dressler. I mean that. I really mean that. Because you've taken something. What is that old saying? If life serves, if they throw you a lemon, make lemonade, something like that. That's exactly what you've done. You've taken a bad situation and you've made something good out of it. And I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think there's a higher calling. I really don't.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And by the way, please remind our podcast listeners of the web address for your blog and how they can make a donation if they want to, so you can continue your good work.
Okay, well, it's www.larrynoodles.com, and all the information is in there.
And you'll see a picture of Larry pumping iron on the
Yeah.
homepage. Absolutely. Larry, thank you so much for your time today.
Sure, thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye.
Sure.
Well,